Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would like to welcome everyone to the November 4th meeting. This is the third meeting tonight. We had a call meeting at 4 o'clock to talk about board evaluation, then a work session immediately following that at 4:30. So now we're into the regular scheduled meeting here at 6:30. I need a motion to approve the agenda, and remember, when you approve the agenda, you are also approving the consent agenda. So the floor is open for motion.
So moved.
Mr. Iverson makes a motion. To have a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hughes makes the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. This time we're ready for public comment. And this is public comment on agenda items only. We have another section should anybody wish to make a public comment on non-agenda items, which you would need to fill the form out to do that. First is Nikki Hauser, and if you would come to the microphone. And I do have your phone number and address here, so there's no need to state that.
Hello. I'm coming before you tonight to discuss the fees that you are wanting to apply on non-school related things to be used in, for example, gym, sports, etc. I've been told and I've read that your proposition is $100 an hour. And I wanted to discuss and, hopefully convey my point of what a tragedy that would be. Not only am I president of a PTO of our elementary school, one of our elementary schools, but I'm also a co-director for the CCYA sports program. That is a youth sports program. We do football, basketball, cheerleading, and we have about 283 kids in ours. We depend on using facilities in the county. That is the only way that we can afford to let these kids play sports. Sports are so important for kids. Not only does it help their mental health, it helps their confidence, and also it gets a lot of kids out of bad situations. I would say over half of the kids that we have in our program come from broken homes. And all they have are the things that we do for them. We don't charge them. All of our coaches are volunteers, And, if we had to pay $100 an hour, there is no way that we could continue to do what we do. There is no way that any youth sports program that uses any kind of county school facility could afford to stay in business. And it is really sad when we choose money over kids, especially a school board. Like, you all are here, you all have been elected by us. I've even voted for one of you because I thought that you wanted to do what was right for kids. Another big thing that hurt us is, the consolidation of Bluntwell. And, if for some reason we could not use that facility, if it's sold to someone who doesn't care about community sports, who doesn't care about kids, what are all of those kids in Bluntwell going to do? My husband coaches one of those teams, and he picks up 2 or 3 on his team and takes them home. And he does that because we can practice in a vicinity around us. If we couldn't do that, he may not be able to do that. Or the kids that he doesn't have to pick up or take home, they probably wouldn't get somewhere if we could find a church or something that was a longer distance. We need our county schools and their facilities to do things. PTOs, not just the PTO that I run. We need the facilities. Every dollar that we earn goes back into the school. It goes back to the teachers. It goes back to the kids. We do our fundraising at the school. If we had to pay for that, we wouldn't raise any funds to put anything back in. So I'm asking you, before you decide to charge to use these facilities, that you think about that. And I also ask that you think about when you're going to sell Bluntful or even Colonial Heights or anything about the people that are interested in purchasing it. Look at that. You know, if it's someone who wants to come in and they want to bulldoze that school and they want to make money off of that property, that's not the right thing to do. I understand that you have to recover funds for this or that, but find it some other way. Give it to someone who wants to turn that into a community center. Give it to someone who wants to do right with that. I know a lot of people are already hurt enough that that school closed and that they don't know what's going to happen to it. Do it for something that's good. Do it for something that is going to benefit our kids. And that's all I ask for you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Normally, I do not respond to any public comments, but I think it's important to understand that there is nothing on the agenda that is going to relate to charging fees tonight. But I think that it's important for everyone in the audience to understand that for many years, the Sullivan County Commissioners have provided money to support the after-school expenses that are related to athletics and community activities. This past year, $300,000 was removed from the budget. The school board did not vote to do that. We weren't even aware that that had been done. And I know that several of the county commissioners weren't aware that that was reduced from the budget either. But that money was always put in there for reimbursement for the expenses that you're talking about, whether it's for athletics or whether it's for other activities. But if something isn't done between now and the start of the next school year, this board will be faced with the impact of trying to come up with the money of $300,000. Now, I'm not sure where you came up with the $100 per hour. Maybe somebody has mentioned that figure. That may even be what's in our fees that we have listed. But every year, for many years, long before I was on the board, and I've been on the board now for 10 years, there was money reimbursed by the county commissioners to take care of those expenses. So the request for us to do it will also need to be directed to the county commissioners, because we asked for that $300,000 last year, and it was in the budget proposal that this board approved and this board sent to the county commissioners. But then it was removed when the budget was passed there by them. And like I said, many of the individual commissioners there did not know that that $300,000 had been removed. And we didn't know it until toward the end, well, about 2 months ago, we realized that it had not gone through like we had proposed. So make sure that you have that correct information. Now, we're not planning on making any recommendations between now and the start of the next school year, or at least I'm not. I don't think anybody on the board has that plan either, because we agree with you that there is a need for the students in the county to have services provided after the school, but we have to pay extra custodial help at night for people coming in. We have to pay other expenses, and we've got to find a way to recover those if the money is not reinstated. And what we're asking for now is for the county commission to reinstate that $300,000 that was taken out to help take care of the expenses that you're talking about. So again, we're not going to be voting on that, and normally I wouldn't respond at all to comments that are made in public, but I do want to make sure that you understand where we're coming from when it comes to those expenses, and we're with you on that as far as the need for it. We've got to find a way to recover the $300,000. At one time, it was $1.1 million that was in the budget that we got reimbursed for. I think it's called the Recreation Fund, if I'm not mistaken. And but talk with your county commissioners about that as individuals, and we've asked for it to be reinstated. We haven't done a formal resolution, but I do know that Ms. Stanley here is in the audience tonight, and I know she's in favor of trying to get that money put back in. At least I think that's what you indicated to me. But
Mr. Jones, did I understand correctly, though, the $300,000 doesn't even cover it all? That was just helping us. I think that's a good point.
The $300,000 does not cover it at all, but it does help, and that's we've had always agreed to do the $300,000 to take care of that, and then we would eat the rest of it as far as electricity and water expenses. Not water as much as electricity, but also the custodial help at night to take care of things. So we're in this as.
Can I add something? I would like you all to know, since you made that point, that CCYA on its own has spent over $3,000 this year taking care of football fields that the county has not had to pay for.
And
So we appreciate using those facilities. We don't leave them trashed.
We-
I stay after every football game and clean up Central Middle School. It's always clean. There is no custodian that ever has to do that. And so I want you all to know that I understand that you need funds from somewhere.
right,
But I would ask that you find those, even if the commission cannot do that. And I will go to the commission meeting as well. I just want you to know that we appreciate using the facilities, and we want to continue to do that.
again, and I don't want to get into a public debate, we just need to make sure that all the facts are out there and that you understand what's in our budget. We approve a budget, we approve it with the idea of knowing where the money's going to be spent. And this year, we approved a budget with $300,000 in there to cover the expenses that's associated with that. And we do have to have custodians come in and check the lights to make sure they're turned off, to make sure things are locked up and things of that nature. And the bathrooms. But we are together with you on this, but it's important for you to understand why that was in the newspaper article that Mr. Widener published recently that got a lot of attention. And we appreciate the attention that it got, Rick, because I think it brought something to light that a lot of us were not familiar with. There is a need for the community to use it, but there has to be a way of doing it, and we can't take money out of our other educational line items to pay for those. We're going to this year to take care of it, but in the future, if we can't get it approved when we do the budget process, we'll have to deal with other ways of coming up with the money. And other school systems, deal with it the same way. Second,
Mr. Jones, if it's not inappropriate, I'd like to have a extra clarification, because we have a lot of board members that wasn't here for all this process. So can I make a couple comments?
right here.
In the beginning, we were getting $1.1 million in recreation funds. They took $800,000 from us and from Bristol and from Kingsport, and gave that 800 back to us in another way, so that they could take the money from Kingsport and Bristol. So that's what got us down to the $300,000 level, and that goes back to about somewhere around 2015, 2016, in that budget cycle. So that recreation fund used to show that line item, I believe it was at 1.1 million. Is that correct?
Well, that's correct.
And so they took that 800,000, which left us 3. Now they gave it back to us in another way, but they still took that money from Bristol, and it was one of those things they did in this case to take money from Kingsport and Bristol. So when you play those games, it always comes back. And as Mr. Jones said, nobody on this board wants to. We didn't anticipate any of this when we passed the budget. We put it in there just for this purpose. And thank you for coming.
Tasha Salyers.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Tasha Salyer. I'm vice president of Holston's PTO. I have a 4th grader that goes to school there. He used to go to Bluntville Elementary before Bluntville was closed. His dad coaches a basketball team for the 4th graders in the community. He also runs various sporting, like agility trainings every week to help growth and development for local athletes. My son's stepmom, Nikki, is the president of the PTO at Holston, and she also coaches several sports teams and helps to run that youth association. So we're really involved in the community, and we rely greatly on being able to use the facilities, especially like Bluntville that she had mentioned, right? And I think it would just be a shame to have, an outside developer come in and repurpose that for apartments or something that might give you a short-term, monetary payoff, but wouldn't have a long-term positive lasting legacy, right? So just to think about other examples of community type centers that allow these sporting events to take place. If you look at TNT in Kingsport, tons of traffic gets brought to Kingsport because of TNT and the sports classes that it's able to offer. And the same in Bristol at Velocity, right? There's lots of traffic that gets brought in because of those centers. And that in turn increases patronage to local businesses and restaurants. And Bluntville really is going to need that, right? With the school being closed, if we could have Bluntville Elementary turn into a community center that could bring some of that traffic that the city has lost back in, that would be a positive gain and tax revenue, right? So I think when we're thinking about selling that campus, those sorts of long-term legacy impacts should be taken into consideration. And we need to make sure that we're not selling that campus just to get some short-term financial payoff, when we really do have people in the community that would want to buy it and leverage it more like a recreation community center. And that would be really good for the kids in this community, right? So recreation centers increase, public health. They increase a sense of community, which Bluntville is going to be lacking now that it doesn't have a school. And so I just hope that you'll keep that into consideration when you're determining what you're going to do with that campus and how you're, next going to leverage it. But we really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to come and speak to all of you. And we appreciate everything that you do for our kids on a daily basis. And thank you for letting me speak.
You're talking about Bluntville, I couldn't hear.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, Bob Brown. I got it right tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Rakulowski. It's good to be with you again. I did not bring my wife this time, but we are still together after bringing her for her birthday. I'm here on behalf of Lakeway Christian Schools, as you're probably well aware. We have one of our board members with us, Polly Owen, also Britt Stones, who is our head of school at Tri-Cities Christian School. At our last meeting, I indicated that we have a strong desire to purchase the Colonial Heights Middle School property. I am aware, and being able to see a part of your work session online, that there's some consideration about what to do with that property. I would like just to remind you that we, as Tri-Cities Christian Schools, Tri-Cities Christian Academy, have a long history in this community. In fact, back in the 1970s and 80s, we had over 900 students at various campuses throughout the county. It was a good partnership. In fact, we purchased property from this very board back in those days. Through a number of situations over the years, in these past years, Tri-Cities began to do a sharp decline. And in fact, that's when we were called and asked if we could come in and help. And we have gladly done so. We're a Christian ministry. We have no animosity, no hard feelings, no difficulties with the government entities, and certainly not the Board of Education, because we feel like that we are wanting the same thing. We want to provide education for the children of Sullivan County, and in our case, the counties around. In fact, I know that you have a fiduciary duty to this community, to the schools here, to take care of and to make what's a choice in the best interest of the schools and the students here. I understand that very well. There's a fear that there will be vast numbers of students from Sullivan County come into our school. I don't know how many. I have no idea. I do know that we've added about 85 students over this past year. We're at pretty much capacity in our Bluntville location now. Of that 85, 8 have come out of Sullivan County. So it's not been a massive exodus there. We draw from Washington County, we draw from Johnson County, we draw from Virginia, we draw from Greene County, we draw from all around. So I understand that there will be some. I'm not trying to say there will be none. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm just simply saying that we're a Christian ministry trying to provide a Christ-centered, academically challenging education, equipping students with a biblical worldview, a heart for Christ, that they might grow in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. I know many of you probably attend places of faith and in your own personal lives, and I'm just saying we're a part of that same team. We want to be a good steward of the resources. As you may know, or you may not, we have put on the table an offer of $1.4 million for that property that I understand was appraised at $770,000 or so. Was not a math whiz, but that's around an 80% increase over what the appraisal says. We would take that property and we would convert it at first for everyone to be on that property. Eventually, when our new facility is built out off of exit 56, that would be pre-K through 5 and the 6 through 12 would be out there. I just say, with all due respect, we're here. We've been here. We're here to stay. We're not going anywhere. And so the question for me, and the question I suppose that will be for you, will you entertain our offer of $1.4 million? Will you entertain our offer of some money and then perhaps our property in Bluntville? And allow us to take that piece of property and build and convert it for ultimately for our pre-K through 5. If you choose not to, we're still going to be here and we're still going to build. We'll just build on our present property at Bluntville as well as our property in exit 56. We would just like to come together in partnership in education. I realize that you're in a situation where you've got to do what you feel like is right, but I would also encourage you to strongly consider not leaving $1.4 million, especially what we're even hearing tonight, laying on the table. In the whole scheme of things, it may not seem like much to you in a budget, but $1.4 million spends a lot. Whether you've got a $20 million budget or a $20 budget. That's a lot of money, and we would like to extend that offer for the board to consider. Thank you, sir.
You mentioned there was $1.4 million. Who's that offer extended to? Because that's the first I've heard of it.
Is that the first you've heard of it? Well, let me back up. That may have been my fault, sir. We took that to the county mayor and said we would like to have this offer, wrote a letter to him. Apparently, that has not gotten around to you, but he has that letter, and I'll be happy to furnish you a copy of that letter.
I've heard some rumors in the community that there was an offer extended, but it's the first that I've heard that $1.4 million has been offered, because I believe that the title to Colonial Heights is in the name of the school system, isn't it?
Yes.
And I'm unaware of all of the legalities and the specificities of how this property is to be dispensed. I'm learning a lot, but that was extended to the county mayor. I'll be happy to furnish you a copy of that letter, and we'll
I would appreciate it, and I'll share it with other board members once I get a copy of it.
Well, thank you very much, and my apologies for not understanding the way that things operate in Sullivan County.
Goes back to some of my original comments in the initial statement. Sometimes it's important to have all the facts, and that's a fact that I didn't have.
That's very true.
And I think it is important as a board member or anyone else here to have those facts.
I would agree with that, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Communications from the board, or to the board.
Good afternoon, and thank you all, everyone, for being here this evening. Welcome to our Board of Education November meeting. Tonight, my comments to the board and to our audience are as follows. On November the 11th, we will honor our veterans throughout our school district. We have several programs going on in our schools, and we are excited to honor our veterans. Also on that day, November the 11th, at 4:30 in the afternoon, we will be having our ribbon cutting for our new Westridge High School. Immediately following that ribbon cutting will be our first open house at Westridge High School. We had a couple of facilities within that were later getting completed after the school year started, and now those have been completed. And we are excited to welcome the community to tour the facility from after our ribbon cutting at 4:30 until 7 o'clock that evening. I hope that Mr. Wagner will give us a big front page spread on that, and with a nice color picture. And what else do I want? Also, November 24th, 25th, and 26th, Sullivan County Schools will be closed, acknowledging and enjoying the Thanksgiving holiday. Today, we had many students from our Sullivan East High School and also Westridge High School compete in the state cross-country meet. So congratulations to those students who qualified and were able to compete today. I don't have those results.
They run tomorrow. They run tomorrow.
Excuse me, they run tomorrow then. I had that wrong. They left today. Thank you, Dr. Rouse. Additionally, our Westridge High School football team will be playing in the first round of the state playoffs tomorrow. A first-year high school program in the 6A classification that has made the state playoffs is certainly something to celebrate. They will play at home at Westridge High School tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock. And again, I hope everyone can get there to watch them play Cleveland. And congratulations to the Westridge football team. I look to our December meeting with lots of excitement, as we will hopefully welcome the Sullivan East volleyball team after their recent quest for a state championship and being able to compete there, as well as our Christmas card winners we will have them at our December meeting as well. That's always exciting and a lot of fun to see what our students have produced with their artwork. I think that completes my comments for this evening. Thank you, Chairman Hughes. Chairman Jones. You all have gotten me confused after upstairs when y'all were going Randall Smith, and so sorry.
That's quite all right.
Whew.
Next is unfinished business, property updates. During the work session, we had quite a bit of discussion concerning the 3 properties. We're not going to repeat that during this meeting, but we will talk about where do we go to from here. We've heard a presentation tonight concerning on the table offer from Tri-City Christian for the Colonial Heights Middle School property. But let me talk about the process just a moment before I entertain any motions or any direction from the board. State law, Pat, you correct me if I'm wrong on any of the statements that I make, but state law states that the school system cannot negotiate or sell school property to an individual or to a group without going through public bids. The school system can sell to the county or to another governmental organization such as Kingsport or Bristol or any government entity. That's the way the law is written. In order for us to sell any of the properties that we're dealing with, we must, in a public meeting, declare it surplus and then put it out for bids unless we do sell to the county. That's the process, and I've stated that several times in the board meetings that we've had in the last few months. I have had people of interest calling me concerning the property. Mr. Brown, you've spoken twice. I've had Kingsport has contacted me concerning buying the property also, as I stated in the work session. They did not put an offer out there, which they could not do, but they could indicate an interest in buying Colonial Heights, which they have indicated that interest, and I have shared that in a public meeting here with the board. Everything we do has to be in public. It has to be stated in public and discussed in public. Tonight we will entertain motions, should any board member want to make a motion concerning these surplus properties, but we will also talk about the restrictions that may be placed on the sale of these properties. As I stated to Kingsport, my personal opinion is that the properties that we have on the market, or will have on the market, 3 of them, that they would be restricted to against any use as a pre-K through 12 program. That's my personal belief and opinion. It will be up to the board as to whether or not there is a restriction placed on those properties that would go along those lines. If the property is purchased by Sullivan County, it can be done without a public bid. I'm talking about the Sullivan County government. The Sullivan County government then can enter into an agreement with individuals, either in a lease or a lease purchase, to where they could have a youth facility or whether they could have some type of program in the community. That would be up to them. We cannot entertain bids from individuals concerning doing a program similar to the one at Bluff City or Holston Valley. If they buy it in a public meeting or in a public bid or through a real estate agent, they could do that, but we can't do that with an individual. But the county itself, I believe, can do that. Is that correct, Pat? If the county wanted to enter into an agreement with someone to do a community center, they could do that. Now, with that said as the ground rules for what we can do with these 3 properties, again, I think it's important that we look at restrictions. If the board votes to do restrictions, then where do we go to from here? If the board doesn't vote to do restrictions, where do we go to from here? So I'll entertain any motion for discussion purposes concerning any of these facilities. We do not have to do all of them at one time, and I think it would be wise not to do them all at one time, as far as starting with what we do with each individual campus. But the first thing I'd like to do is to entertain a motion concerning restrictions for all 3 school properties. That's a motion for restrictions concerning the 3 different school properties.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion that we restrict all 3 properties in the same manner. I will say that, new information here tonight is, caused me pause, but I will make the motion that we restrict all 3 properties the same. And then if, depending on what the board does, I'll have a motion to follow up.
And when you say restrict them all the same, are you saying?
All the same.
Pre-K through 12?
Pre-K through 12.
So the motion then is to restrict the 3 school facilities against being used as a pre-K through 12 program. Do I have a second on that motion?
A second.
Okay, have a motion by Mr. Hughes and a second by Dr. Rouse. Floor is open for discussion.
I'd just like to make one comment with that. We talked about it a little bit at the work session, and I understand the sentiment behind it. I understand where we're looking at, just because if another county or city or just whatever municipal school system comes into our county and they take students away from us, it's a funding mechanism, and it's a bad thing, and it's a double if it's taken one of those inside our county already. I guess the problem I have with it is that we have a ton of schools sitting all over our county right now that used to be our schools are now just sitting there abandoned. And if we just continue to put more restrictions on it and make it where it can't be used, then it just continues to have eyesores for the community. The last thing I want is Colonial Heights School, which is right in our neighborhood, my neighborhood, to be abandoned and never be used because we put a restriction on there. I would rather it be used and be something that the community could be proud of, and I just hate to see restrictions on there that limit its use. And the size of that building, the size of all of these buildings, it doesn't really lean itself to many different things. We've had some community centers come in, but only 3, I believe now, unless I think it's 3 so far, of all the schools we've closed. There's just not that many. I'm just not in favor of it. I understand the reasoning, but I'm just not in favor of it.
Other comments or discussions? I guess we're ready for roll call, Ms. King?
Mr. Hughes,
Yes.
Mr. Ireson,
No.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Rouse,
Yes.
Mr. Spivey.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-1. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So the motion was to restrict the use of these 3 campuses against pre-K through 12. The floor is open for any additional motions concerning any or all 3.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion to declare Bluntville surplus and to put it out for bid beginning January 1. If the county does not show an interest or fails to make an offer for us to entertain, which would be legal if I understand correctly. And then this isn't part of my motion, but I'll just handle that discussion.
The motion is to declare Bluntville surplus and to put it out for public bids unless the county extends the purchase offer prior to January the 1st, 2022. And I'll make an amendment after. Do I have a second on that? That's the motion. Do I have a second?
A second.
Motion by Mr. Hughes, a second by Dr. Rouse. Any discussion?
A question about just that process. I know that if we put it on the deed and we sell it to someone, then that now is on the deed because the vote that just happened. If it transfers from us to the county commission as owners, is that still on the deed? We transfer it that way, or since it's county body, it doesn't transfer?
It would transfer with it now. It would, if Bluntville, if Sullivan County purchases it, then it would be up to them as to how it was used, but it would not be a pre-K through 12 program. I'd like to offer an amendment to Mr. Hughes' motion that basically says that we declare it surplus and we put it out for public bids unless the county agrees to purchase by January the 1st, 2022 at the appraised value. And I think the appraised value, it's already been appraised. We did everything before we put anything out for bid or anything of that nature. And the appraised value is already public knowledge, but
I'll accept the amendment without objection.
okay. The motion again is to declare Bluntville surplus and to put it out for public bids unless the county purchases it for the appraised value by January the 1st, 2022. Any discussion? Roll call, Ms. King?
Mr. Hughes,
Yes.
Mr. Ireson,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Rouse,
Yes.
Mr. Spivey.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. And if Bluntville, if County Commission purchases this, it does not have to go through public bids, but the County Commission then can, according to the way the law I believe is written, they can lease, they can subdivide, or they can use it for their office space or athletic facilities, whatever they need it for a community center. And I don't know if they have an interest or not. I have had a couple of county commissioners mention it to me that they have an interest, but again, with 24, I don't know what the vote would be or if they have any interest in making that offer. But if not, then the motion was passed 6-0 that by January the 1st, 2022, we'd go out for bids, and that would be sealed bids like we've done for the others, unless this board comes back and votes to go to put it in the hands of real estate. Now, I believe when we sold Brookside, we sold it through a real estate agency, if I'm not mistaken, but that was about 2 years ago. And these discussions about restricting against pre-K through 12, they've been going on for several years now. It's not a new discussion, so don't take it as anything personal. It's been a discussion that's been going on for quite a while about the use of these facilities. This time, Ms. Rafalski, new business. Well, Colonial Heights and Sullivan Gardens, is there any motion concerning any of those?
Mr. Chairman, it's not a motion, but I would recommend we take time with those two pieces. I have questions as to whether we should ever sell the Sullivan property. I want to take a look at that, and the Colonial Heights property. I don't think we need to be trying to handle two sales at one time anyway. So
Agree.
that's my thoughts.
Now on to new business, Ms. Rafalski.
New business tonight is the Sullivan County Department of Education operational procedures as it pertains to the health and wellness of students and staff. We discussed that in detail during the work session. This is in regard to a change as far as items in the procedures, as it is a reflection of the legislative session over this past weekend. The highlights of that would be that no longer would we have a mask mandate with an opt-out. That mask would be merely optional in our school district. The other things that were mentioned in the legislative session, we were already doing, such as we have not been quarantining students or advising on quarantine. That has been an action of the local health department as well. And those are basically the main changes. We will keep the remainder of the document intact, and my recommendation this evening to the board is that I recommend that you accept this document with the changes that I highlighted earlier this evening. I recommend approval.
Mr. Iverson makes the motion to accept the changes made by Ms. Ralph-Dowski. Do you have a second?
I second.
Mr. Hughes makes a second. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, ready for roll call, Ms. King?
Mr. Iverson,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Rouse,
Yes.
Mr. Spivey,
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, that concludes the agenda that I have submitted for this evening.
Thank you. We discussed several meeting dates during the work session. And as soon as we get information concerning whether or not the other attorneys can meet on those dates, I will send that information to Mr. Hull, and he'll get it out to the board members about the possible dates. But the next regular scheduled meeting is on December the 2nd. We'll have a work session at 4:30, and then the board meeting at 6:30. And for public information, the school board will be attending the Tennessee School Board Association meeting in Nashville, November the 18th through the 20th. And Mr. Widener, if you get your people to pay for that, you're welcome to come down and join us. At this time, we'll go to Mr. Robinson for board comments.
I don't have a whole lot. Just good luck to our West Ridge football team tomorrow, and our cross country from East and West Ridge. It's at state right now. Some people ain't gonna like this, but I went to North. Everybody I think knows that. And it sure does feel good to finish ahead of that other school. I'm just saying.
No name of the school, right?
But no name on it.
Mr. Spivey?
I don't have a whole lot, other than to say I'm a little dismayed with, as a fan of public education, with what our legislature did at 1:30 in the morning. I don't think we've had good leadership through a lot of things in the past couple of years, and it's been a constant shifting of, we'll leave it to localities and then they take it away when they don't like it and they don't want to take any responsibility. I feel like this board has been willing to take that responsibility and it's been usurped. So for the policies they seem to encourage, the bills they passed are exactly the opposite of that in theory. I would encourage anybody that supports public education to look at the bills they passed, not just as to mask mandates, but also as to partisanship in public education, which I personally don't think partisanship has any role in any public service that should be provided equally to all of us, regardless of our political views. So I hope that gets covered more. I haven't seen that in the Times News. I have seen that in the Johnson City Press and most national news organizations, but that's really the only comment I have as somebody that cares about public education.
Mr. Iverson?
Just happy that our West Ridge team is playing tomorrow night. Not sure where they're playing the weekend after that, but I'm sure they're going to make it one more round. Like Mr. Robinson said, happy about the two schools doing the cross country. It's fantastic. Just a good time right now. I'm glad that we've lifted this. I mean, I know everybody's got different views on it, but I'm very, very happy that we've lifted a mask mandate. And that's it.
Mary?
I don't have anything except congratulations to our kids that are doing so well and that football team. And thank you, teachers, for hanging in there and doing such a great job. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody, and use those 3 days to enjoy family and get some rest.
Mr. Hughes?
I want to congratulate first all of our athletic programs. Sullivan East and Westridge has had huge success in several sports this year, as well as football. And thank Mr. Iverson. We play at Maryville, which would be an easy game, as everybody knows. I think that's the next round, and I'm also glad to finish ahead of that unnamed school. I think I'm going to make some really brief comments tonight about one of our commissioners. And after our discussion here today about the recreation money, I think it's very important that our people out there understand what's going on. Tonight I want to talk about Colette George. She's serving her first term, and it's rumored it will be her last. I spoke with her on 2 occasions when I was chairman about budget issues. She was always interested in knowing the process and how it worked and the facts and how it related to the budget. She was only one of a few that made this effort. She is what we commonly refer to as a city commissioner because she is elected out of the Kingsport city zone. Every time I spoke to her, she talked about the big picture. By this, I think she means that the city and the county has to work together and that one can't succeed without the other one fail or affecting the other. In my opinion, she carried out that vision in the way that she voted and the way that she conducted business while serving on the commission. I have taken the time to thank her, and I hope some of you will take the time and reach out to her as well. Once again, I find myself feeling like some of our city commissioners done more for us than some of our county commissioners. I'm not going to go through a whole long list, but I want to point out just a few things the way she voted on. May of 2019, when King Dwight sponsored a resolution co-sponsored by Herschel Glover to give the system $584,000 to hook east of the sewer line, she abstained. But it didn't matter because in July they took it back. When they finally allowed us to use our money to install the sewer line, she voted no. But she did so because they were taking back the $584,000. She suggested that they call the engineer in to speak, but a motion was made to call the question, and the vote was taken, and they took the money. So how did she vote when they proposed to take $7.8 million from our budget? Well, she voted no. You'll recall that one of our commissioners said we were overfunded by $12,327,500 when the actual number was $638. She, in fact, voted no when 12 others voted yes, even though it was illegal and inaccurate. It's important to note that there wouldn't have been a huge raise that was in this budget if that had happened. In fact, we'd have had to cut 90 teaching positions. I thought it interesting that one of the 12 that voted to take the money was one of our own teachers, Elisa Storms. She usually abstains, but in this case, she voted to take money from the school system. How did she vote in April of 2020 when King and Crosswhite and Cole voted to stop or supported a resolution to stop the high school under construction? She was one of only 6 that had the courage to vote no. Remember, the purpose of halting construction was to see if there was enough money to finish the project. But by stopping the project, they would have guaranteed that we would have run out of money. And at that point, we had to pay for the project, whether we built it or not. How did she vote when it come time to move our money from one line item to the other, for a simple matter, to put turf on our football fields? She supported this, while many of our county commissioners, including Glover and King, voted no. So while some of our county commissioners voted against their own schools, Colette voted yes. So once again, one of our city commissioners voted to support us when some of the county commissioners voted against us. Good luck explaining these things. So on behalf of West Ridge and Sullivan East, thank you, Colette. She voted for us when she didn't have to, and she didn't even have to run a commercial during the football game. So in conclusion, whether you live in the county or the city, you should take time to thank Colette George, because I think she's serving her last year as commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the audience for coming tonight. It's been a long night. I think it's been a productive night. And we know that there's lots of things going on with the state right now concerning BEP funding and school system funding for next year. There was a meeting last night, I believe, in Greenville, and the attendance, I understand, was small. Very few people came out to talk about the way that school systems are funded. There's another one going to happen in Chattanooga. I had a phone call from Memphis yesterday concerning some of the things that they're looking at now to try to put money or take money out of the budget. It appears that some of it may be that they want more money local instead of state money. But I would encourage everyone who's here tonight to keep abreast of the details of what they are proposing and how they're looking at revamping the funding from the state, because it could impact us locally, not just us as a board, but I'm talking about taxpayers and others. So listen carefully when they talk about these meetings in different communities of putting money out there for the school systems. I don't have a lot of details because those details aren't forthcoming yet, but those meetings are taking place, I think, statewide concerning the revamping of the BEP. First time it's been done since back in the 80s, I believe, and this could impact us for the next 30 years. So read carefully and listen to the facts, and come back to the meetings with those facts and ask questions. And if we don't know the answers, we'll try to find them. Even if we may not agree always, but at least we'll try to find the answers for you, and we'll look into the details of it. Any other comments from board members? Thank you, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make that motion.
Mr. Spivey makes the motion. All those in favor?